Peace and greetings. Welcome to Salaam Geographia. My name is Iram Samar, and I will be telling you a little bit about what Salaam Geographia is and how you could benefit from it. It's a website that I've developed with some freelance geographers. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a former geography school teacher. I have a master's in geography education from the Institute of Education, and currently I'm studying for a PhD at the Institute of Education. My interest is in anti-racism and decoloniality in school geography. So I've created this website for a number of reasons. But the most important reason is that I needed a space to share ideas, which sometimes I feel very uncomfortable about sharing in other places. Not to say that I'm not invited or that people are not warm towards me. No, it's more to do with a space where people who might feel a little bit marginalized can come together and celebrate their own diversity, whether it's how they identify themselves or how they feel about their own cultural heritage. Now, I've kind of put a statement out there that it's basically a space to celebrate geography through understanding and respecting people and places. And my initial reason for setting this up was because I just think that teaching should be inspirational and we should learn to grow. Now, obviously, I would like to appeal to the geography community in general. Being from a Pakistani Muslim heritage myself, I found accessing the curriculum sometimes quite difficult. So I thought it'd be nice to just create a space where we can have these kind of discussions where we talk about why there is an uncomfort or discomfort in the classroom. So, number one, why have I created this space with my fellow geographers? Well, because every student in your school or institution deserves the best you can offer them to reflect their everyday geographies as advocated in the Geographical Association in the 2022 conference. The theme was everyday geographies, and it was a very important theme because it kind of made everyone understand that everyone's geographies are very, very different. So what I would like to do is I would like to talk about people's geographies within this space, but obviously it's starting up. So the website, it's going to hopefully add more articles as we go along, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But what's important is that we help you focus on your current existing curriculum and students to include their cultural and spiritual heritages. And hopefully this website will show the benefits of doing that, because obviously we need students to have a very nice experience in school, and everyone should have a really good experience in school. And I'd like to think that students walk away from school thinking that they had a really good time, and it shouldn't be spoiled by them feeling uncomfortable or underrepresented in any shape or form. And also it's important to create an anti-racist and decolonial environment in your institution. So hopefully this space will kind of give you a practical idea of how to actually go about making your curriculum more anti-racist and more decolonial. And I'll go into more detail about what I mean by these terms. And obviously the videos that are going to hopefully the videos that are to come are going to go into more detail about what these terms actually mean. And a part of my PhD research is also to find out what these words mean and how they impact people's lives and what we can do to be anti-racist or decolonial in our approach to education in general. So, why geography? Now, we at Salaam Geographia believe that geography is a really fantastic subject that every child should experience from primary right through to secondary education and beyond, particularly students from Black and minority ethnic minorities. However, we are keen to visit people's school. So if you're interested to contact us, you can contact us via the website and we will send out a consultant. And no matter what ethnic background or cultural heritage, you will always benefit from anti-racist and decolonial practices in the classroom. Now, what's important here is understanding that when we talk about Black and minority ethnic communities, it's a very homogeneous way to group people, but seen as policymakers and schools are using this term to describe or refer to students who are not white, I will be using this term just to make things a little bit easier so that we don't get caught up in whether it's a correct term to use or not. Personally, I do feel rather uncomfortable being boxed and categorized in this way. However, as a descriptive term, I too shall be using it just to explain what I mean. Now, I want you to ask yourself some important questions. Now, who are your students and who is your staff? So who are your staff? So what I mean by this is what are their cultural heritages and how do you racialize them? Now, we think that we we would like to think that there's a very inclusive environment and that we have equality and diversity within our institutions, but more often than not, that's not the case. So it's really important that we're honest about this and we ask ourselves, you know, who are the people in our school? So it could be the wider community as well. So the next thing that I want you to think about is, what topics do you think you will need in developing a more inclusive and anti-racist approach to learning? Now, you need to think about this as you think about anti-racist and decolonial ideas, because you need to think to yourself, you know, where can I actually, where can this kind of learning, where can it actually be fitted in to the curriculum? And also, you need to ask yourself what kind of service you would like from Salaam Geographia, in the sense that, you know, what kind of questions might you have? And please do put them in the comments below so that I can pick them up and myself and my colleagues can actually look into whether we can help you in that. Perhaps we can make future videos on those things, having thought about them more deeply. And would you like us to help you transform the teaching and learning in your school, to give you practical anti-racist and decolonial ideas? And you know, you need to be serious about this as well, because if you are to use our services that we have on our website, then we would provide bespoke training for that. So the more questions you ask yourself, the more questions you have, the more easier it is to design a training that might benefit your school. So these questions we've devised for you in case your institution wants to expand on any further training on what Salaam Geographia provides in terms of anti-racist and decolonial curriculum planning. Now, I want you to think about this question: what kind of teacher am I? And in the GA conference, there was a teach meet, and in that teach meet, I did a little presentation on, what kind of teacher am I? And then I talked about how to be an anti-racist teacher. And I talked about how I chose to be an anti-racist teacher, a decolonial teacher, not necessarily by choice, but because of being me. So I went into the discussion of how, when I go into a classroom for the first time, students obviously see me like as a Muslim, and they see the color of my skin. So for me, I have to deal with this reality straight away. Now, that's why I consider myself an anti-racist teacher, because I have to start teaching about race and racism, because I have to sometimes defend myself as well in a classroom, which can sometimes be quite difficult when the students you're trying to teach don't look like you. And when I say don't look like you, it's beyond the narrative of white British. It could mean from other cultures too. So how do we navigate those spaces? How do we actually decide when is the appropriate time to bring these discussions in? These are important questions also that we need to ask ourselves, but it's really important that you do ask yourself, what kind of teacher am I? Okay. And remember, it's all about learning. So it's important that we ask ourselves the right questions so that we can answer them for the benefit of our students. Okay, now this is an important thing that we need to think about: anti-racist geography in the classroom. Now, obviously, anti-racist geography has multiple meanings, and depending on the topic that you are teaching, you would have to decide, how you bring this in. Now, if you do have a classroom, multicultural classroom or a multi-ethnic classroom, then you will have students from different cultural backgrounds. You will have, they will have connections to different countries around the world. They might, not necessarily go on holiday, but they might go to visit family and friends. Now, it can be very difficult for students when they try to learn geography in the classroom when it's from a certain narrative. So if it's a teacher teaching from a very how do I put this? If a teacher is teaching straight from the spec or straight from the textbook, there could be a bias within that. So perhaps the students that you are teaching won't respond to what you're saying. Sometimes they might just not even realize, and just you can merrily go on with your lesson, as I've done for many, many years. I've just carried on teaching the spec as it was. But because of my own cultural heritage, when I'm challenged, things like, Miss, where are you from? Or Miss, why do you wear that cloth on your head, or something like that, I find myself having to explain and talk and have a discussion. So it's very important that we understand that, there is a bias within the education system, and it's a predominantly white British, I would argue, predominantly Christian outlook or a secular outlook to the education system. But of course, when, you know, if you've ever worked in a school in a metropolitan area, like for example, if you've ever worked in Manchester, Birmingham, Bradford, or London, you know, you have a diverse classroom. So you will have students from different ethnic backgrounds. So within the South Asian community, you might have some students who identify themselves as Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and you know, there's sects within those religious groups. And then you have the cultural differences as well. So it could be, so within the Pakistani community, you might have the Punjabi speaking people, you might have the Urdu speaking people, you might have people from the different districts within Pakistan. And again, they have different cultural needs. And sometimes a lot of teachers in my past that I've encountered have mixed up certain ethnicities, the Afghan students with the Pakistani students, and thinking the cultures are exactly the same. They could be similar in some aspects, but again, there's a lot of differences that teachers need to be aware of. And I would say the same for other countries as well, like India as well. So, there's many different regions within India and different languages spoken. So again, it's very important that we have an understanding of what anti-racist geography in the classroom is, and also why it's important. Now, I know when I was doing my Teach Me talk, a lot of teachers wanted to know a little bit more about the concentric model that I was talking about. And this was actually adapted by Andrew M. Abraham. So it was during COVID-19. So he wrote, "Who do I want to be during COVID-19?" And he devised this chart. And sorry, I can't source the original where it's originally from, but there is some inspiration taken from Ibram X. Kendi's work. And the book that I would recommend is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. And I explained in my talk that there are some concentric rings that you need to consider when you want to become an anti-racist. And I said the smallest ring, the questions that are within that zone basically are it's the fear zone. And it's the zone where you're in kind of like denial and you're not, you know, thinking outside your own comfort zone. So these are the kind of things that you might be feeling. I deny racism is a problem. I avoid hard questions. I strive to be comfortable. I talk to others who look and think like me. So if you surround yourself with people who just look, not to say that you don't have your own set of friends, no, it's more to do with if you do not know about other cultures and other differences to explore diversity, and you don't talk to people from different kind of people who identify themselves as different to yourself, if you don't talk to them, then what will happen is that you won't learn anything about them, and you will just think that you can speak for them, or you will feel that you can talk for them. So when you start engaging with people from other races and other ethnic backgrounds, you'll find that they have their own ideas about things, and it's important to engage with those discussions and not always think that you are right. And also to kind of pretend that racism doesn't exist. If you're in the fear zone, you will deny that racism even exists. And although some people argue that race is a social construct, we still have to have these discussions about race. because it is used in the classroom many times by students, and we need to be able to contextualize this as geography teachers. Now, as I said in my talk, I think most of us are in the learning zone. I hope to think that people have gone beyond this fear zone, and they now realize that, yes, racism is happening around us, and that there is a problem, and it's present and it's current. Okay. And that you are aware that racism exists. So if a student comes up to you and feels like someone has said something which is remotely racist, that you believe them. So it's a safeguarding issue in the classroom. So it's very important that we actually register this and take it seriously. Another aspect of the learning zone is I seek out questions that make me uncomfortable. No one said being an anti-racist was going to be comfortable. There's going to be discussions that you don't really want to have, but you have to have them because it's affecting someone's life. Someone is hurt. Like in the case of child Q, it's absolutely tragic what happened to child Q, and it should not have happened. No child under the age of 15 or any age should be treated so badly. And of course she was strip searched in school, so she had all of the adults present who were supposed to be her protectors at that time, because in school safeguarding is very, very important, and there's a lot of training that goes into this. But it's important for the institution to have things in place to protect the students. And the fact that she was racialized as a Black student, we've got some serious issues here, because just recently we during COVID, many students felt very disturbed by what they saw, the treatment of George Floyd and how he was murdered, and just the brutal killing was disturbing for everybody, because social media outlets had the video, full video, and people actually saw for themselves what kind of brutality takes place. And of course it was in the US, and child Q is in the UK, and it just kind of shows you how this is not unique to the US or the UK, and it's got to stop. And no, I'm serious, like it has to stop. We are all human, we are all equal, and no child, no human being deserves to be treated like a subhuman just because of the color of their skin. It's absolutely unacceptable. So if you feel uncomfortable talking about George Floyd and child Q, there's a problem. But if you feel that you're still going to discuss it, feeling uncomfortable, then you are in the learning zone, and you are now going to become stronger and stronger to be able to sort of handle talking about these issues, because they're very important for people from Black and minority ethnic groups, because these groups are the groups, I mean, children and adults alike are going through a lot of racism in this country. We are the minority, and we might be the global majority, but in terms of the UK, we are the minority. And it is quite daunting going into predominantly white spaces or predominantly white areas where you are distinctly different physically. So it's very important that we understand that to be uncomfortable is a part of the process. The third thing, I understand my own privilege in ignoring racism. This is an interesting one, because sometimes you might be from a British white or a white sort of racial background, and you might feel that, hang on a minute, I'm actually you know, racism doesn't affect me. I'm not racist, so it's nothing to do with me. But you're not these things are, we can't actually define who is racist and who isn't. You have to understand your privilege. You have to understand that if this has been said many times, there have been many Black youths who have said that they are with their white friends, and when the police sometimes comes, they get searched and their white friends don't, more often than not. And this is a problem. Okay, this is a problem. And you have to understand your privilege. You have to understand that you might get promoted in your school. The head of department of your school might just favor you unknowingly because you're white. And I'm speaking from experience here, and they may favor somebody over you because they're white. So, it's very important that we address this. I educate myself about race and structural racism. I am vulnerable about my own biases and knowledge gaps. So it's important to read and understand things. And what I mean by structural racism is that sometimes it's just embedded in the system and it's just there and you have to recognize it. It's also the last element of the learning zone in this model is I listen to others who think and look differently to me. So sometimes you might disagree with someone, like say, for example, if you are celebrating Christmas and you have a fellow Muslim in your school who might not celebrate Christmas, it's okay that they don't celebrate Christmas because you're following different religious paths. And likewise, if there is a Hindu staff member and they are following their own festival, then it's important for you to understand that they've got their own cultural needs and they might want to celebrate in their own way. So it's important that you understand that. And in terms of physically, for example, a Muslim may have a hijab, head covering, or a Muslim man might have a beard. He might have a thobe, which is a long kind of garment. And likewise, in the Sikh community, a man may wear a turban. He may also have a beard. And also some women might have a turban as well and a dupatta on their head. So it's very important that we know that there's cultural differences, and to know that a Muslim and a Sikh, they might have similar, like they might, their appearance might be similar in some aspects, like some Muslims wear turbans, like imams wear turbans, and also both have beards. But to know that their religions are different and to respect that. So that's the learning zone. And know that your students, if they ask you to pray, I mean, you got to ask yourself, do they want to pray? Is there a facility in your school? I know the GA this year was brilliant, that Sheffield University, sorry, not Sheffield University, Surrey University had a lot of praying facilities. Well, they had praying facilities for males and females, and they also had like a wash area where Muslims could do their wudu, which is ablution, where they purified themselves with water. So that was quite nice. And within the mini masjid or mosque, there were prayer mats ready for students and delegates to pray, which was quite nice. So you need to ask yourself, do I have that facility for my students? I know I used to open up my classroom during lunchtime because there was no facility. Many times I used to let students come in and pray, and it literally take 5-10 minutes, and then they would go out to lunch. So it's really important that we think about these things for our students. I identify how unknowingly, sorry, I'm going to go into the growth zone now. So the growth zone is the zone that we all should aspire to be in, to sort of become the ultimate anti-racist teacher or professional. I identify how I may unknowingly benefit from racism. I promote and advocate for policies and leaders that are anti-racist. I sit with my discomfort. I speak out when I see racism in action. I educate my peers how racism harms our profession. I don't let mistakes deter me from being better. So it's okay to make mistakes. I think this is really important for people. If you felt that you've been racist in the past and you're quite remorseful, it's really important that you know that that's okay. That's a growth zone. That means, you know, that there's a brighter future. So it's important to know that we all make mistakes and that we should move on from those mistakes and make ourselves better. I yield positions of power to those otherwise marginalized. Now, this is, again, I said in my talk, you know, we need to think about who has the higher roles, who has the TLRs in teaching, you know, who has a stronger chance of becoming head, who has a stronger chance of becoming an assistant head. Are you giving opportunities to people who are racialized within the Black minority ethnic communities? And if not, then start thinking about this, because it isn't fair. Because I know, working in schools myself, I feel like I have to work very hard to even be recognized. And you know, and I can, it's very difficult to accuse someone of racism, because sometimes when people are institutionally racist, they're very polite and nice. They're nice to you, and it's very difficult to identify. And when you have a senior leadership which is predominantly white, the stronger narrative is the white community, and they are actually making all the decisions. So that becomes quite difficult. The last point to be in the growth zone is I surround myself with others who think and look differently than me. So it's really important that you expose yourself to people from different cultures and different ethnic backgrounds, just so that you learn a little bit more about them. And then, you know, obviously with your, you know, if you're a teacher and you've got a classroom, a very diverse classroom, it's really important that you learn a little bit about everyone's culture as much as you can. And it could be just sitting and talking to a student for 5 minutes, just getting to know them, and during parents' evening, just asking questions. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. It's better than assuming something about someone. So I hope that helps. So remember, there's 4 main zones, 3 main zones: the fear zone, where you're in denial; the learning zone, where you start realizing the problem and start making some like something happen; and the growth zone, where you actually actively get involved in helping people that might be experiencing racism. Now, if you do want to go to the Salaam Geographia website, there's a number of blogs that have been written. At the moment, it's just myself, but writing the blogs, but we're hoping that we've got a few more articles coming. But the idea of those articles is to expand on some of the discussions that, you know, I've had in the classroom, and also expand on some of the things that have happened to me as a teacher and to other colleagues. And I think these narratives are very important if we're to move forward. And this particular blog is my bus ride home. Go back to where you came from. And if you want to know a little bit more about this, you can go to the website Salaam Geographia and just have a look at that article. And thank you very much for listening. I hope that this video helps you, and please do watch this space, because I will be getting some guests on as well to make more content for you, so that you can just grab a cup of tea and just drink and listen. You know, hopefully it will help you. Thank you very much for listening. Until the next time, assalamu alaikum and peace and greetings.